All right, well, I'm delighted to be joined on the line now by the former world champion and the 2021 World Snooker Championship finalist as well, SHAUN Murphy. SHAUN, you're coming off the back of quite an incredible couple of weeks, a few weeks, in fact, over in Sheffield. And I know you'll be disappointed to have lost the final to Mark Selby, but I mean, what an extraordinary run you had. And you know, the players you beat along the way, Mark Davis, you had the Masters champion, Yan Bingtao, the world number one, Judd Trump, and then last year's finalist, Karen Wilson. So I'm sure there's a little bit of disappointment, but you can't be too upset with how your 3 weeks went.
No, for sure. I mean, I've definitely reached the stage of my career and age. I'm a father of two, and two young children, a young family, and I think you reach that stage where you start seeing things from a slightly different perspective. If that had happened to me, 10 years ago, I would probably be a little bit sorer about it. I'd be a little bit more disappointed. Of course, I'm disappointed to have not won the championship. Of course, I am. But particularly having had the season I've had, which has been pretty low key, to go to the World Championships, do well and play well more than anything, actually felt as if my game was, started to turn a bit of a corner. And to show that and play well and have great time there with the fans. And it was great to see the crowds back and all of those things. It was a really, really positive few weeks. It was just a shame I couldn't get to 18 frames before Selby did. But listen, in the big scheme of things, it was a great fortnight.
There was a great video online. I'm sure you've seen it since, like it's gone fairly viral. But I think Brendan Moore filmed one angle of it. It was Rob Walker, doing his BBC intro part at the start of the final, and he's in the dark, and then he introduces the crowd, and honestly, like, tingled up my spine, and there was goosebumps in the back of my neck when I saw it, because you've gone so long now without fans there, and I'm sure to have fans there over the last few weeks was quite incredible. I mean, can you hear that roar, that Crucible roar? Like, I've been at the Crucible a couple of times myself, and I know that players' dressing room area isn't exactly too far from the arena. So when you hear something like that, what impact does that have on you in the build-up to that final?
Yeah, I mean, we're literally stood backstage, meters away from the floor at that point. We can hear it, echoing through the room, the vibration through the floor, and obviously it does funny things to your mindset and everything. That's what it's about. That's what performing's about. And we've been chasing dreams of playing professional snooker since we were children, of course. And it's all about winning and taking the trophies home, and but performing in front of a live crowd is part of the equation. And we haven't had that for a year, as no sporting events have had it. And so we've all been in the same boat, really, where that's been concerned. But it was great to be part of what we hope is going to be the start of bringing live audiences back to indoor venues. The UK government, gave the World Championship special sanctions to have the crowds in, and it was more of a test case to see what happens. So it'll all be data led. It'll all be interesting to see what comes back now. But hopefully this is the start of a return to, indoor events, music events, restaurants, nightclubs, casino, all of these types of things starting to reopen, that we've all just taken for granted so long. But having been through the last year, our lives have changed so much. And, wouldn't it be great to think that the snooker, whoever would have thought it, but the snooker could be leading the charge, leading us out of that mess.
Absolutely. And I mean, you mentioned the crowd there, and I guess getting them on side was a theme that seemed to crop up for you quite a bit during the World Snooker Championship. And I saw the lovely interview with your wife Elaine and son Harry with Hazel Irvine on the BBC during the final. Yeah. And like you were saying, you're a bit of a show off, and it was a lovely little moment, and kind of one of these things where you're like, the fist pump became almost a theme with you during the championship. I mean, was that a kind of predetermined thing where you thought, I'm going to try and put off my opponent here, or was it just instinctual when you won a big frame, or what? How did that kind of come about?
No, the only thing that was pre-planned about it, I suppose, was the fact that I was going to do it at all. And I'd made that decision 2 years ago at the World Championships that from going forward, I was going to be a lot more interactive with the crowd. Because I often felt the urge to, give the fist pump or salute the crowd or get them involved. But I'd always shied away from that. It's a bit of a thing in snooker. No one really does that. And it was for some reason, I don't know why, I just decided that I wasn't going to do that anymore. I was going to embrace the crowd, embrace the feelings, embrace the emotion. And then, of course, lockdown struck. And last year went to the World Championships and played in front of nobody. And this year we played the whole season behind closed doors. So I hadn't had the opportunity to embrace any audience because there hadn't been any. And then when we got to the World Championships, I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to enjoy myself here. I'm going to let the sort of inner showman, I suppose, if that's the right term, let him out. And but the rest of it was completely spontaneous, and I had certainly had no ideas that there were, it certainly wasn't to try and put my opponents off or, gain an advantage in that way. Although I think it probably did give me a slight advantage. I think that was a knock-on effect. I think a couple of my opponents were a little bit knocked by it. But as I said at the time, I think it's okay to celebrate your good shots and celebrate your good moments. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And, in tennis, they're celebrating after every point. Golfers, they make a par, they give it the fist pump, So I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think it's something snooker could do with being a bit more like. And that's me now. I'm going to carry on doing stuff like that. But as I say, it's important not to, you can't stage manage stuff like that. It's not you've got to go out and give it 5 fist pumps today. It doesn't work like that. It's a purely natural sense. And if you get that urge to get the crowd involved, then get them in on your side. The point I tried to make at the time was that everyone in that room, we've all been locked up for 12 months. No one's been out. So they were desperate to see something exciting and be entertained and be part of the show. And I certainly felt that weight of expectation, really, to try to put on a show for everyone that had come, And, I think we're just going to embrace it from now on. I think I'm so lucky. So many of my friends have lost their jobs, their careers. All of that's been taken from them in the last 12 months. We're so lucky that our tour has continued. And, I'm just going to embrace it now and enjoy every minute of it, because I suppose what the pandemic's shown us is that you just never know when things can be taken from you, do you? You don't know. You don't know when the world could stop turning. And I never thought it could. So I'm just going to embrace it and treasure every moment going forward.
Sean, when you mention treasuring every moment, I mean, that's a crucial thing that I guess cropped up was around almost a year ago now. Your best friend and former manager, I think, as well, Brandon Parker, passed away very suddenly, had his battle with cancer. And I remember that happening, and you've tweeted some lovely photographs of yourself and Brandon and the memories you had together afterwards. And I think it was just before last year's World Snooker Championship, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
I mean, a lot of people talk about grief and the ways in which they deal with grief, and there, I guess, there's no easy way or right way to deal with it. And how did you manage to pick yourself up after such a blow like that? I mean, Brandon was so close with you for so many years, but that can't have been an easy thing.
No, it wasn't, and it still isn't, to be honest. When I'm in touch with his family a lot, I'm in touch with his wife and his children, and they're like my family. So we're in touch regularly, and it's always I suppose bittersweet to we talk, and it's nice to tell tales about Brandon, but it's also heartbreaking that he's no longer here. But I suppose I just keep it in mind that if he were here and he saw us getting a bit low on ourselves or a bit down, he would give us a good kick up the backside. That's that he wouldn't have that. And so the best way to honour his memory for me is to try to, remember all the life lessons he taught me. He was a bit of a surrogate father to me, really, in my life, and try to put into practice some of the lessons he taught me. Try to honour his memory that way, and play some good snooker and try and entertain the crowds. He'd love that. He wouldn't tolerate any, sitting around in dark rooms crying over him. He just wouldn't have that at all. So just try and get on with it. And, I suppose with grief, there is no right or wrong way, is there? There is no rule book on how to deal with it. A bit like when you have a newborn baby, they don't give you a handbook as to how to deal with a new baby when you leave the hospital. When somebody dies, there is no handbook on how to deal with that either. And it's just something you just have to muddle through every single day.
Absolutely. Never easy, for sure. I mean, you even spoke before the semi-final, Sean, about, having very dark days in the game. And I think the quote was that at times, there were times that if you'd had a good paying job to go to, you would have quit. And the coronavirus restrictions and the fact that you live now in Ireland, and a lot of the tournaments are over in the UK or abroad, certainly had an impact on that. Was Brandon's death maybe put that in perspective for you, that maybe, family is the most important thing, and probably made it more difficult even to be apart from them for that time?
Yeah, I think so. It's you in times of trouble, you reach out to those that are around you, don't you? But if you're stuck in a hotel in Milton Keynes, isolated and separated from people, it's very hard to have that interaction and that support, even through FaceTime or whatever it might be. It's not the same. And of course, I made the point a few times that the tour the last year has been very difficult for everyone, but it's been slightly more difficult for players who don't live on, they don't live in England or Scotland or Wales. If you don't live on that island, the tour life was quite hard. For myself, Ken, Fergal, Mark Allen, Geordie Brown up in Northern Ireland there, for us who live on this island, life's actually been quite challenging, because you can't just nip back and forth when the tournament finishes and come and see friends or family. Normally, if I were in a tournament in England and it went wrong, I'd just hop on the next flight to Dublin and come home. Those flights have been slashed and almost vanished in the wake of the pandemic. So life took on a big change, and you find yourself isolating in hotel rooms, which, as a father of two very young children, I did appreciate a few nights good sleep. I did take full advantage of that for a while. But that very quickly descended into, there's only so many episodes of Frasier you can watch. And before you start climbing up the walls a little bit, you can't go out for a walk because nothing's open. You can't socialise with anyone. There was no interaction with anyone. It was literally just stay in your room and wait for your next match, which could be days and days and days away, when everyone had gone home and I'd had to stay there. So it was week after week after month after week. It was pretty tough, and I've no doubt that had a big impact on my performance. It's very hard to get yourself up for a game then, having been so low. And that's the problem with, I won't use the word depression, but that's the problem with stuff like that, is you don't feel yourself sinking until you hit the bottom. You don't know you're doing it until you reach your bottom level. And you go, crikey, I've not felt this low before or for a long time. I think if you could sense it on the way, you'd probably do something about it. But it was tough. And then, I genuinely meant it after the final. I said that the crowds, having the live crowds back at the World Championships, had brought me back. They'd really played a big role in stopping my descent into, bad mental health, I think. And having that ability to perform and play in front of a live audience again and feeding off their energy really made a massive difference.
Some of the crowds that you mentioned that weren't actually there in the Crucible but were 100% behind you were the Irish crowds, and Irish like to claim people as their own, I guess, after a certain period, and certainly you were claimed as Irish as that run was going on in Sheffield. But some people who mightn't be familiar, like your wife Elaine is a professor in chemical biology in UCD. She's a Dub herself. And look, maybe tell people who aren't familiar. I know you have three of four, I think, grandparents are Irish. So if you aren't familiar, what's your Irish background?
Yeah, my grandparents, my father's side parents are all from Kilcock in Kildare, and they're buried there. The family, that's where they're buried. And my mum's family are from Donabate, the north side of Dublin there. And they moved to Manchester, and had, my parents were born in Manchester and I was born, in England in 1982. But my family heritage and line is all Irish. I'm just, I was born in England and obviously sound English, but I'm happy to be claimed as Irish, very, very happy. Way before we moved back here, way before I met Elaine, I always imagined that one day I would end up moving back to the motherland. I'd end up moving back here. Just because every time I'd come to Ireland, I just felt a deep sense of connection. And, I did like to go back to the old town where the family came from. And, I was always quite close to that side of the history of the family and where we'd grown up, where the family came from. And I always had it in mind to one day move here and call Ireland my home. And then when Elaine and I met, she made it very clear that, one day she would she would want to go home, as most Irish people do who leave the country. They do like to come home. And when we were expecting our second child, we just decided that, you know, now was the time to go. We wanted Molly to be born here. And, you know, we wanted to raise our family, you know, around her family and the close ties we have to Dublin. And of course, you know, the strong family connection that I have here as well. So, you know, we just felt that was the right move. And I've loved every minute of it, I have to say. You know, it's been fabulous.
I even saw the lovely photographs of your children, Harry and Molly, wearing the Dublin GAA jerseys on Instagram, I think. So you're definitely doing the right things and making them feel at home.
Yeah.
Can I just ask you, when you first came over to Ireland, then I know it probably takes a little bit of time to get used to the snooker scene here, if you'd call it that. And Fergal O'Brien, I know, was someone who was very important in kind of assimilating you into that life and taking you down to Selbridge, to the snooker club there. What was that first number of months like, getting used to not necessarily a massive change in culture, but certainly a slight change in culture?
Yeah, it was actually interesting to me. You know, there are some stark differences to the way of life here as opposed to in England. And obviously there are some massive similarities. You know, there are lots of similarities. But even just small things like the road signs are different, and the way the traffic light system works is completely different here. And I've been driving for 20 odd years, but I had to sort of redo my, you know, what do you do at an amber light? Of course, there are no amber lights here when you're going down to green. It just goes from red to green. You've just got to go. And it's a bit of a mad dash at the lights. But no, luckily, you know, the snooker family is very close. And as you say, Fergal really helped assimilate me into the Irish snooker scene. But, you know, once you're in a snooker club, you could be in Dublin, or you could be in London, or you could be in Shanghai, frankly. You know, they're all very, very similar. And the snooker family is very welcoming and you know, very similar all over the world. So there wasn't too much trouble dropping into snooker life here in Dublin, I have to say. And I spent a good 18 months practicing out of Selbridge Snooker Club with Fergal. And they, you know, the family there that run that club, Phil and his family, you know, they just welcomed me in with open arms. And of course, you know, it was a great place to play, a real hotbed of snooker, you know, real good for amateur players. And obviously Fergal has been a resident player there for a long, long time. And they welcomed me in with open arms. And I spent a good 18 months practicing there and loved every minute of it. You know, it was great. And, you know, even though I've moved on from there now, I don't play there anymore. Whenever I do go back to practice with Fergal, or I go back there, whatever the reason might be, you know, it's nice to go back and be met with smiles and a good strong welcome, and somewhere I'll always be very thankful for. And meeting those lovely people there who run it, you know, they were very, very, very special to me at the time, because obviously when I moved over here, I had nowhere to play, so they were very, very welcoming and played a big role in settling into life here in Ireland.
I know you practice in the Stephen's Green area now, and like, I'm sure you probably drive in and out of the club now, but when you first arrived over and you're getting, you know, the Luas in from Ballantyre to Stephen's Green, people forget that snooker for you is a 9-to-5 job. You know, you're practicing every single day. So was it funny getting the Luas in the morning? You know, you have people probably wearing school bags and holding their laptop bags or whatever, but you're standing there with your snooker cue in case, no doubt. Like, were you getting funny looks on the Luas in the morning time heading to work?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did get a few funny looks. Yeah, in fact, I stopped taking my cue in the end. I found a locker at the club and just left the cue there because it was a bit conspicuous. You know, it did draw a bit of attention, and a bit like the Underground in London. You know, you get a few characters on the Luas, and there was one particular morning I got on it and I got off it again at Milltown, and I was like, I'll just wait for the next one. You know, there was a couple of lads on there who they were a bit overly keen, and just decided to give that one a miss. But no, listen, you know, I have to say, it surprised me just how popular snooker is here. You know, bearing in mind there aren't any professional events here anymore. I think the Irish Masters was in Goffs until maybe 2005. And I missed that year. I never got to play there, but you know, it'd be great one day to see the return of professional snooker to the Republic of Ireland. I think because it's so popular here. I was shocked and surprised just by how popular it is, and it felt like every morning I got on the Luas to travel into Stephen's Green that you were met by, you know, the world's biggest snooker fan. And then the next morning you'd be met by somebody who knew even more. And I've watched your last match and maybe you shouldn't have done this. What about this? I was like, yeah, no, you're probably right. And, we had a lot of those conversations. But, people in general are very kind and very warm, and they just want to talk, and, they've enjoyed watching you, or, they want to reminisce about the Steve Davis, Dennis Taylor match in '85, or Alex Higgins, or stuff like that. So I have to say the vast majority of people are extremely kind and, very warm. And especially in Ireland, of course, Irish people are famous for their warmth and, welcoming spirit. So I was pleased to say that was extended fully to me, and still is.
Absolutely. Everyone's an expert when they're
True,
giving tips.
That's true, yeah.
Like, from an Irish scene perspective, there is a little bit of excitement in some of the young players like Aaron Hill and Ross Bullman and Robbie McGuigan as well. Coming through. In terms of the snooker scene, like, I've spoken to people like Ronnie O'Sullivan and Jimmy White and Stephen Hendry about this in the past, about increasing the interest in snooker and getting it back, not necessarily exactly to the heyday of the 80s when they were all rock stars, but it's something similar. And I know snooker halls are not easy to rent. They're not cheap. And of course, there's going to be financial difficult times ahead. But from your perspective, I know you've spoken about, the impact the smoking ban perhaps had in places like Ireland on snooker. But do you think snooker in countries like Ireland can have a bit of a renaissance in coming years? Has the interest increased in your view?
Well, I mean, it certainly seems alive and well here from what I can see. And, I know the Irish Association are working very, very hard to popularise the game and do what they can to host junior events, amateur events. There's quite a healthy scene going on away from the main public eye of professional snooker. And Irish snooker in particular does seem very, very strong. As you mentioned, you've got Aaron Hill coming, Ross Bullman coming, we've got Robbie McGuigan up there in Northern Ireland coming. There's quite a few lads who are on their way, I have to say. And, certainly with Aaron and with Ross, I would, from Cork, they're really flying the flag, and they've got some very strong game, I can tell you. I practice with Ross quite a lot. Ross hasn't made it onto the tour yet, but he's coming. And you've got Aaron there who beat O'Sullivan last year in one of the events. He's not frightened of anyone, and he's got all the shots in the book. So I'd like to think that the future of Irish snooker is pretty healthy. And I think you've got the very strong legacy of pros like Ken Doherty and Fergal O'Brien. They've got very strong legacies to leave behind, to light the path and guide the way for the next generation. It'd be interesting to see when their full-time playing careers finish, what they then choose to do. I've got a sneaky feeling that certainly one of them may look to try to, reinvest into the amateur game and try to, go off searching for the next one, because I think they're out there. I think the interest is there. I think one of the challenges for snooker is that just because of the pure size of a snooker table and the weight and all of that stuff, it is one of those sports you have to specifically go somewhere to do it. It's not transferable. It's not like a badminton where, you can play that at home if you want. You can play it in the garden. It's not like tennis where you can hit the ball against the wall, and football, you can do it anyway. It doesn't work like that. My golf clubs are in the car, and I can practice my golf swing, anywhere really. There's driving ranges all over the place. But with snooker, you have to specifically make a journey to go and find a snooker table. And it requires quite a lot of commitment, that either on the side of parents or, young boys or girls with cars. It's quite a heavy commitment. It's quite time heavy, certainly to become good at it. And maybe we live in a generation where, maybe certainly the younger kids, they might not have that. They might not have that in them anymore. To stand there for the hour upon hour, week after week, to train and become skillful at something like snooker. It demands so much. And there's only, I think there is, probably the world over, there's probably only a small percentage of people who are willing and able to give it the sacrifice that it requires. I've just finished the World Championships. I'm going to have probably the best part of 3 to 4 weeks off now. I won't play at all. And in a month's time, I'll be significantly less accurate than I would be if I went for a game today, having played solidly for 3 or 4 weeks. And so, if you're not putting that time in day after day after day, you do lose it. And you know, how many young men or women do you know who have that drive, who have that ability, who have the time, who have the money required to do that? What I would say, in difference to certainly the UK, what I would say about Ireland is the Irish Snooker Association is funded by Sport Ireland, and that makes it almost unique in terms of funding bodies around the world. There aren't many government bodies fund snooker associations, and you know, that's a real massive positive step for snooker on this island, because it's already ahead. You know, the national governing bodies in England, Scotland, Wales, they don't get a penny from the government at all, not one penny. And I'm not sure what the figure is, but it's a fairly substantial figure that the Irish Amateur Snooker Association receives. And you know, if there is going to be a next generation, the next wave of Irish talent, then you know the foundations are there. You know, they are being put in place to find them. So I'm optimistic about the future of Irish snooker.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Very good point. Something I hadn't thought of, the funding from Sport Ireland, and certainly that's one way to find the next Ken Doherty or Alex Higgins or Dennis Taylor.
Yeah.
Can I just ask you, Sean? I know you've spoken to David Kelly in the Irish Independent about this, and there was an extraordinary interview you did a couple of years ago. It might have been at the Crucible after a match about the bullying you were subjected to when you were younger. I think you were 13.
Yeah.
Maybe, year 9. And there was one quote that really stood out to me. And you had said, this was 2 years ago in my mind, I'd love to say at 36, I have forgotten, but I haven't, and I never will. This clearly and understandably was as an experience that left its mark on you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, without question. And, you know, now as a father of 2 young children, I'm very, very mindful of what you say to children. You know, I'm mindful with my son who's coming up to be 5. You know, he's now at the age where he'll start remembering things that I say to him now. You know, up until now, you've probably had a bit of a free go at it, but he's now at the age where if I use the wrong tone or the wrong word, or I'm a little bit short with him, that's going to land on him, and he's going to remember that, as I did as a child. And I think it's important that you know, these things, they last. These memories don't go away. And I, you know, yeah, I wish I could, you know, forget some of the horrific things I went through as a kid, you know, at the hands of bullies at school, inside and outside of school. And, you know, of course, a lot of people today, they use the throwaway comment and they say, sure, but, you know, it worked, didn't it? You know, it helped you get where you are, and it made you a tougher person, and this, that, and the other. Like, I'm not sure people who say that have ever actually been through it, you know, because it wasn't very pleasant, I can assure you. But yeah, no, I had some horrific experiences at school. You know, I quite enjoyed school, but I didn't enjoy being at school with everyone else. If I could have gone to school on my own, I would have loved that. No, certainly the place where I grew up in the Midlands in England was, you know, quite a rural place. Nothing ever happened there. You know, Irthlingborough was quite a small, sleepy little town. And from being 10 years of age, you know, I was big news in the town. You know, in a very small place, I became quite big news at such a young age, and got sponsored by the local millionaire owner of Doc Martens shoes. He lived locally. He sponsored me, and that sort of drew more of the spotlight, which I didn't really want. You know, I was very thankful for the sponsorship, of course. And that meant that I could get a snooker table of my own and stuff like that. But it brought with it some negatives, you know, and it brought with it some people. I think the kids I went to, they thought that I thought that I was better than them, you know, which I didn't. I was just trying to do my thing and try and chase my dream. But it led to some quite horrific, you know, violent scenes at school. And, you know, there was one day, I think it was the penultimate day of my last year at school when I was 13. You know, I was badly assaulted by a team of lads, you know, who were a lot older than me. I think they were the elder brothers of some kids in my year. And they would have been in their last year at school, and they really gave me a good hiding, you know, in the toilets. And they left me like, left me for dead is probably a bit extreme, but they gave me a good kicking, you know, and I wasn't getting out there on my own. And but for the teacher who found me and took me home, you know, who knows how that day might have ended? Who knows where that might have gone? And that's something I'll never, ever forget. But you know, as a 38-year-old father now, I sort of see things through a slightly different prism, a slightly different perspective. Kids can be nasty, you know, but they are kids, like, you know. But it's certainly, the whole experience has lived with me, and it gave me I suppose people talk about Mark Selby's upbringing. His father passed away when he was very young. You know, came from nothing. You know, I remember him as when we were 10-year-old children when we met. You know, he literally had nothing, and that forged in him that just pure match player who just he wouldn't give you a nod in the desert, Mark. You know, he wouldn't even look at you twice on his way to trying to beat you. Lovely lad away from the table. Like, you wouldn't meet a nicer person away from snooker, but once you lock horns with him on the table, he just wants to kill you. And I suppose my upbringing was probably quite similar, and those experiences I had at school, they probably lit a fire in me similar to the Mark Selby one, where you just think, yeah, if I am going to do this, I'm going to have to go through these scenarios. You know, if I want to escape this area where I am, if I want to try and get out of this the sort of small town mindset, I'm going to have to upset a few more of these people. And, you know, even still to this day, you know, I don't have to scroll very far through Facebook of, you know, friends of friends from that era of my life. Don't have to go too far before you find someone who's still got a bit of an axe to grind with that 13-year-old Shaun Murphy. They're still not happy about it. And it lives on to this day.
I mean, there's almost a screenplay feel to it for that extraordinary story to then culminate. And I remember watching the 2005 World Snooker Championship and thinking, you know, this 22-year-old from England who's essentially, you know, it was quite an extraordinary run. You were only the third qualifier, I think, to go all the way, and the second youngest after Stephen Hendry to win the tournament. But when you look back on that 05 World Snooker Championship, 150 to 1 shot you were to win. And I think that the magician nickname no doubt came as a result of that extraordinary run. But what was that experience? When you look back in the rearview mirror now, Shaun, 16 years on, do you find it quite incredible? I mean, those memories must still be seriously strong in your head.
Yeah, I think one of the strongest memories of that whole era, especially having now been in 3 further World Championship finals since, and been the runner-up every time. I think I look back now and just, you know, they say youth is wasted on the young. And at 22, you know, I had no battle scars at all. I'd only played in the World Championship 3 times. I'd never won a match at the Crucible before winning my first round match that year. And so it was so new. I had no fear. I hadn't really felt that horrible taste of defeat there. I didn't really understand how big it was. Of course, there was no social media back then. You know, you actually had to physically interact with somebody to be abused by them. You know, there were no people getting on you, you know, on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, calling you all the names under the sun and this, that, and the other. That was a distraction you didn't have to deal with. And so I think I was just so innocent, and I played my game. I went for my shots. I had a bit of a defensive game, but not much. And really, I just kind of intimidated and bullied my way to the win. You know, I pushed a lot of stronger players aside, people who should have beaten me on paper. And you know, and I just, certainly in snooker terms, just intimidated them and pushed them aside. And went through them with, you know, long potting and going for my shots. And I think I frightened a lot of them. They were like, well, we can't keep this kid safe. You know, if we leave him the pot, he's going to go for it, and he'd probably get it. And that was the truth for those 17 days. You know, most of the shots I went for went in. And in the subsequent years, I kept going for them, and they didn't go in. That's just, unfortunately, that's the nature of it. You sort of live by the sword and die by the sword. And I've been unable to tailor my game down the Mark Selby route. I've not been able to. I don't have the patience to play the way he plays. I wouldn't have it. We're very different as people. You know, if we go play golf, I'll hit driver on every hole. I'll go at every flag. I'll want to attack and play the killer shot at all the right time. Whereas I'm sure Mark would really be a little bit more sensible and a little bit more cautious. But I'll probably have more fun than he has. But but he's got 4 World Championship titles at home. So who's the idiot? But at least, I've not been able to really rein that side of my character, and that's who I am. I'm quite happy-go-lucky. Go for my shots, try to entertain the crowd, and put on a good show. I've always felt not the pressure, but I've always felt the weight of expectation to remember that you are there to entertain. I think as snooker players, we're in a very privileged position to be paid. Obviously, you're only paid if you win, but we are paid to, we are in the entertainment industry after all. And I think we have a responsibility to remember that and put on our show. And, there's always heroes and villains in every scenario, isn't there? And the public get to choose who they want to fulfill those roles. But, the 22-year-old, Sean, who won the World Championship in 2005, he was completely unaware of any of that. And he just went for his shots. And as I say, for those 17 days, most of them went in.
Yeah, it really was no fear snooker. Sean, you've been very good with your time. And just to wrap up, this run to the final now, and I know you were last in the final in 2015, but you've dipped your toes into punditry, and you've certainly got an excellent career, no doubt, lined up after you hang up your cue. But we saw with Mark Williams' run to the world title in 2018, I think it was, that gave him a renewed sense of vigor and love for the game maybe as well. Has this run and I guess improvement in form given you a bit of a pep in your step? Like, what are your ambitions and goals for the next little while?
Yeah, well, it's certainly replenished my belief in myself. That belief had gone, if I'm honest. I'd lost the belief that I could ever compete at the cutting edge end of an event like the World Championships. Thought I'd maybe have some good matches left in me there, but I didn't think I'd be ever in the final again. I thought those days had gone. And you're right, I have dipped my toe into the world of punditry, commentary, broadcasting, and that's something I intend to continue with. If I'm lucky enough to be offered positions by the broadcasting companies in future, then it's something I'll accept very graciously, because as the last 12 months have shown us, you just never know when governments around the world and pandemics can pull the wool, pull everything from underneath you. You just don't know when that's going to happen, do you? So I am going to continue with that. I think the last year has taught me to try and fill my life with things I actually like doing, and trying to do as many things as I actually enjoy. And I enjoy the broadcasting side of things. I enjoy the coaching. I'm very heavily involved in the World Governing Body's coaching program. I'm sort of in charge of putting together we call it our level 3, which is our top level coaching for coaches around the world. And it's my job to furnish that course now with information. And so I'm privileged to be a part of that. I'm thrilled to be part of that. As I say, I will look forward to try and being involved with companies, broadcasting companies around the world for snooker, and because I think I could be quite good at that. I enjoy that, and try to bring my perspective to people watching around the world. But in terms of playing, the last couple of weeks has certainly reignited my belief in myself, that maybe my best days aren't behind me as I thought they were. Maybe I'm living my best days, or maybe they're in front of me. I don't know. I think moving to Ireland has changed my life, so positively. I love being here. I love being what I consider home. As I say, I know I'm English, and I know I sound English, but I do feel that my DNA is Irish. And so I feel such a close connection being here. I love being in and around this country. And I think that has helped, reignite those flames. As for my game, my actual goals in terms of my game, there are a few goals out there that I've set. A couple of years ago, I really turned my eyes trying to get to the top of the rankings. That's something I've never achieved. And that was always a goal of mine, to try to get to world number 1. I've never achieved it. Judd Trump's too far ahead for it to be a short-term goal. But that's something I'd like to love to one day be able to turn around and say, for a period of time, I was the number 1 ranked player in the world. I've never been able to say that. And I think, I guess having just lost in the final of the World Championships, who knows, maybe, I'd love to think that by the end of my career, whenever that is, who knows, I might have another one of those championships left in me just yet.
Absolutely. Well, Sean, just keep doing what you're doing, and we've been following your journey and really enjoying it. We'll have to get the off the ball cameras when lockdown restrictions allow in for a session with you in Stephen's Green, and
you're welcome. Yeah,
see you up close and personal, playing a few balls. But Sean, it's been an absolute pleasure. We really appreciate your time, and Ireland's Sean Murphy. Thanks a lot for that.
Brilliant.